Welcome, everybody. Monday, June 3rd. John Aravosis here. Aravosis Report. Hello, all. How are you guys doing? YouTubers. Woo. I'm thinking my lighting is okay. Actually, the strongest the lighting's going to be. It's not getting any stronger. Anyway, hey, guys. Let me get TikTok rolling here. TikTok go live. And we are ready to rock and roll. Woo. All right. TikTok's rolling. TikTok mirror. There we go. Excellent. Good evening, all. I've got my Duluth mug that one of you got me. We'll be getting back to Ukraine mugs, but I do like this one too. It's quite heavy. It's kind of a nice mug. Anyway, hello all. Hey, TikTokers. Hey, YouTubers. How's everybody doing? Hey, Ash. Christopher thinking there's no show tonight. How dare you? Hey, Cody. On TikTok, how are you? Thank you, Ash. Yes, I got a massive haircut this weekend. It's funny. The person who was cutting my hair, thank you, Mark, for the gift, wanted me to do more of a haircut. Thought this was too long, and I was like, ah. So they wanted to go shorter in front, and I was just like, I can't go shorter; it'll kill me. So, but yeah. Sometimes I go short. I mean, I like my hair long and curly, but anybody with long curly hair knows it's a total pain in the ass. So as much as it's like fun and people like it and go, curly hair, it's just like sometimes it's fun to cut it off and you literally go, boom, throw water on it and it works. So anyway, copied your haircut. Oh, man. Anyway. Oh, so there's Ava. Yes. So Ava Wahlberg sent me, wonderful Ava, who's one of you guys, sent me an insane quantity of candy from Sweden. Thank you, Elizabeth. That I thought she was sending as a gift, like for me to auction to everybody. And she goes, no, it's for you, guys. This isn't even all of it. I've got a separate bag of chocolate that I put in a separate plastic bag because I want to especially keep the chocolate in the fridge because they're little individual pieces of chocolate. I don't even know the weight of this, Ava. Well, I didn't look at the box. This is like several pounds of chocolate. I'm going to go with a couple kilos, maybe 5 pounds of chocolate. I mean, it's an insane quantity. I just cannot tell you how much. I did a video on TikTok of this. Okay, it is almost 2 kilos. There you go. So almost 5 pounds of candy, not chocolate. It's everything. It's chocolate. It's sweets. It's like gummy bears. It's nougat. Oh my God. Anyway. I had several of them. Thank you, Lotus. I did have several of them on the thank you video I did for her on TikTok. Go check it out. It's very funny. But I kid you not, I just lost 6 pounds in the last 6 months. Thank you, Mustard. And I'm very happy I finally lost the 6 pounds because I had extra weight. I could use losing a little bit more, but I'm pretty good now. Nonetheless, I am not giving up Ava's chocolate. I am just being very careful every day with how much I have. How much of it I have. Anyway, thank you, Ava. Thank you, Charles. It's fabulous. I mean, it's a really fun collection too. So I'll probably do more videos. I'm probably going to do more videos. I know we all think, but it's true. I should, whatever. You know how it is. We're all funny about our weight, but I should be 4 pounds less and then I'm perfect. And that's not my skinny young guy weight. I really should be 4 pounds less and then I would be appropriate. But it's still, at least now I'm back to normal right now anyway. So thank you, Ash. But yeah, no, I think I look good now too. I mean, like I said, the 6 extra pounds was too much. I got at one point I had 12 extra pounds from where I am now. Anyway, and now I still have 2 containers of those Trader Joe peanut butter cups as well. Yes, but no, I think maybe every other day I'll do a Swedish candy video to sort of show you guys what because they're quite fun. They're quite good candies actually. Anyway, you want to send something to auction, Gregory? We can figure it out. Yeah, let's figure it out because I don't have a PO box, so I'm just kind of careful who I give my address to for obvious reasons. But we can maybe figure something out. Anyway, welcome guys. John Aravosis here. Thank you for joining us. Today's Monday. Yeah, Monday, June 3rd. It is now summer. Is it officially summer? Well, okay. In America, after Memorial Day, which is the big holiday weekend, end of May, where we commemorate our war dead, big holiday, is considered just sort of the unofficial beginning of summer. I think summer doesn't officially start until June 21st, maybe. I think. Thank you, Vicky. But it's clearly not spring anymore. I mean, it's hot here. It's any case. But Thank you, Jen. But welcome, everybody. So, yes, we've got an interesting show tonight. It is June 20th. That's what I thought, Tree Robitaille. We've got an interesting show tonight. I think there's a good amount of interest. It's an interesting news show, I think, tonight. Thank you for the gifts. Who was that? Jen, Vicky, Jen again. I'm looking at some of the gifts on TikTok, so I didn't want to forget you guys. There were a couple more, I think, that popped in. Raymond, Ava, or Raymond. Ramon, I'm calling you Raymond. I speak Spanish. Ramon, Raymond. I'm sure you get that. If you're in the States, you probably get that in school. Raymond, Charles, Mustard, Lotus, Brian, Chazak. Just looking at the gifts I missed here. Burosaurus, Elizabeth, Rocco with a rose, Mark Starr. I just hate to miss gifts because I really appreciate when you guys give them. So, and Kevin Quick as well. And Alan, thank you guys. And Vicky, it's nonstop gifts. Oh, and a very cool ones from Dawn and Tony. Excellent. And Elizabeth, you guys are, I could tell when we're back, it's almost like it's been a holiday or something. Everyone's kind of perkier today. Lots of interesting news from Ukraine. As you guys know, this is the show I do where we go through the latest news from Ukraine every day. Sometimes throw in when former presidents get convicted of 34 felonies, we talk about that too. But otherwise, it's mostly a Ukraine show. It has been a very, as I said, I think it's an interesting news day. A lot of interesting stories. Let's just start kind of going through them. And yeah, folks, anybody wants to explain to Annie Cat what the deal was with the chocolate from Sweden and on YouTube, feel free. So today is day 830 of Vladimir Putin's special 3-day military operation. Things not going so well. Actually, I would say what's interesting, thank you, Martin, once I start to kind of go through the news of the day, thank you, Lori, I think it's probably the new people, but it's a good question. The new people will always chime in and say, yeah, but how is it going? Is Ukraine winning? Is Ukraine losing? How is it going? Thank you, me, 10-10980 for the crown. And it's a good question. I think it's kind of a day-by-day thing or a week-by-week thing. I know in talking to Vlad, our friend in Ukraine, I sort of gauge every week how his mood is doing up and down. I think things are going a little better. And particularly because of NATO, a number, 11 NATO countries, including the US, including Germany, including France, including the UK, raising the limitations on Ukraine using their weapons to fire into Russia. Thank you, Nick, for the gift. Thank you. Who is this? Iwalina. You guys know that up until now, pretty much all of NATO, the Brits started allowing it early on. I don't know that they made it official early on, but they made it official about a month or two ago. That, excuse me, I just ate before the show, by the way, so I'm going to be during the show here. Thank you, Epsilon. Thank you, Iwalina. But what was I saying here? I hate this because how they're doing, because I wasn't on topic. I was trying to sort of talk about the general topic of how things are going. And my sense is that NATO lifting the restrictions on Ukraine using NATO weapons. I say NATO weapons. There are no NATO weapons, but weapons from NATO countries. So individual countries raising the restrictions on Ukrainians not being able to use them to fire into Russia. Now saying you can use the weapons to fire into Russia, but most, if not all of the countries put restrictions. I don't know if the Brits have put restrictions, but the other countries put restrictions, including the U.S. The U.S., for example, said, I will show you on the map, that Ukraine can use our weapons. Oh, thank you, Annie. Oh, those are crazy. I was wondering what those VR goggles, I don't know that I've seen those before. Those are crazy. What the U.S. said, for example, was Ukraine can use our weapons. Thank you, R19 and Nick. That was very cool. And R19. They can use our weapons to fire across the border at the Russians around here. What's going on is the Russians have amassed tens of thousands of troops in the area here. They're also trying to amass them up here and have been attacking the Ukrainians across the border with their troops, but also, firing artillery shells, things like this. And the Ukrainians could not fire back at the Russians because the Russians are in Russia. And NATO rules said you can't use our weapons to fire into Russia. So Ukraine's got all of these artillery pieces and all of these artillery shells from NATO that they couldn't use to fire back at the Russian artillery firing at them. Well, that's crazy, right? So finally, a bunch of NATO countries came around. The Brits came around early. The U.S. was the last important country to come around. Biden was last week. And we are letting the Ukrainians fire across the border in the Kharkiv region, maybe the region next door as well, kind of confusing, against Russian forces that either have attacked, are attacking, or are about to attack the Kharkiv area. It's a little bullshitty still, I will say. I mean, even me explaining it to you, did you notice how I had to get into the, well, Russian units who either may have attacked, would attack, were about to attack the Kharkiv area, and they're just across the border in Russia, right? It's this very specific, thank you, Vicky, this very specific rules that the U.S. has set up that frankly are very confusing. Because if you're a Ukrainian commander on the front lines and you've got a U.S. weapon like a HIMARS and the Russians do something, you're going, okay, is the Russian too far into Russia that the Americans might get pissed? Are they about to hit us? How do we know they're about to hit us? Do we have to be sure they're about to hit us, right? And the Americans said, thank you, Chocolate Lover. Thank you, Ginger. The Americans said the Russians had to be ready to hit Kharkiv. But what if they're ready to hit the region next to Kharkiv? Is that okay for us to attack them? It's a bullshit, as T just said, technicalities. It's kind of bullshit technicality stuff from the Biden administration. It is good that Biden came around and is loosening up the restrictions on Ukraine. But guys, this is how you lose wars. You don't micromanage things. You don't literally, and by the way, thank you, Marie. The fact that it's confusing and thank you, Me109, it's confusing for me to even explain to you the details of what rules we gave the Ukrainians means it's just as hard for them. And that's not the way you win wars. But having said that, still better. And the Ukrainians reportedly have already been using our weapons, HIMARS on the border to take out some of the Russian units, which is great. Ukraine this weekend, I believe, took out Russian S-300, S-400 anti-air systems around Belgorod, which is right across the border from Kharkiv. We believe they used some other, I don't think I've got it in my notes here. I was gonna put it in my notes. U.S. weapons, not maybe the what are they? I want to say like ground launched SDBs. What are they? The ground launched. Is it GLSDB? What is it, guys? You know this. But I think it's that system we used. It was not the HIMARS I had read. Bottom line is they did use a U.S. system. They did fire into Russia, and they were able to destroy a really important Russian anti-aircraft system. GLSDB. There you go. Thanks, Mustard. Big deal. And thank you, Bryce, for the gift. So this is great. All right, let's start rolling with a quick sip of water, and then let's start rolling with the news, because there's lots of, I think it's good news today. Glad you all like the haircut. Like I said, I got a haircut this weekend, and the guy that was cutting it wanted to go shorter. And I was like, look at this. I was like, this is already very short. I don't think I want shorter. And he goes, I really should be shorter in front. I was like, I'm not letting you do shorter in front. I said, maybe next time. So since you guys all like it, maybe next time he gets to do shorter. We'll see. But yes, it ended up being good. It was a risk, but I'm glad he did a good job. Thank you. Be nice for the road, Rose. I don't think shorter. I'm not like military guy. Thank you, Me10980. So lots of news here, guys. The first publicly acknowledged NATO instructor has arrived in Ukraine to train F-16s. Now, whether he is training, this is a Greek military officer or Greek military member of NATO, whether he is training on flying F-16s, training on maintaining F-16s. I'm not sure which. Thank you, Nick. But the bigger aspect of the news was he's the first officially acknowledged NATO trainer that has been sent to Ukraine and is in country. Now, that's very interesting. We sort of had trolls in the comments on TikTok going, "Oh, it's only one. Who cares?" Thank you, Red. Well, it's important because where there's one, there will now be hundreds. The whole point of having the one, first of all, is a bit of a trial balloon. And thank you, Red. Thank you, Alan, for the gifts. Lots of gifts coming in on TikTok. Thank you, guys. It's a bit of a trial balloon. Trial balloons in politics. Thank you, me. I'm calling you me, 109. Trial balloons in politics, and maybe in life in general, but we use them in trial and politics. As Mustard just said, test the waters. Trial balloons are basically when you do something in a small way to just test what the reaction is going to be, right? And in this case, it would be testing the reaction of Russia. Thank you, Lori. But potentially checking the reaction of domestic audiences too, right? Checking the Greeks, checking the reaction of their public to a Greek military trainer going to Ukraine to do trainings. Does the Greek public get upset, or are they cool with it, right? Then Greece could send more. This is also NATO-wide sending people, because eventually if Americans go or French go or Germans go, there will already be some Greeks there, so it's not as big a deal, right? It is also to test the Russians. This is to basically, the Russians keep threatening nuclear war, as you know, and they, 3 times a week, the Russians, if we sneeze, the Russians threaten nuclear war. Nobody cares because they're not going to do it. But it's just to test them because they kept saying, oh, we will escalate. If you escalate, we will escalate. And it's just, I think, to kind of test the waters and see what do the Russians really do. I don't think they're going to do much of anything. Honestly, they're going to attack more Ukrainian civilians, which they do anyway. So I'm not convinced. In any case, so this is very significant because it isn't just a test, but it kind of breaks the glass ceiling. And now you've got openly, we may have had them before, secretly. Thank you, Succeed. But we now openly have NATO troops in Ukraine training the Ukrainians on war fighting. That's great. Oh, McFadge. That is so cool. Sorry, very cool. What future encounter? I was like, that's very cool. McFadge just got me a really cool TikTok gift. Thank you for that. That was really neat. So anyway, good news. And by the way, the other thing too, the Greeks doing this is fascinating. The fact that it's Greece, to me, I feel like that's Greece tweaking Turkey. Turkey has been kind of a bad NATO ally recently, right? And they're playing games with Israel and all this kind of stuff too. But but in terms of NATO, they've been a bad NATO ally, right? Thank you, Joker. Turkey has been, remember, they were really bad about Sweden and Finland joining NATO. They kind of put the kibosh on both. And then they finally let the Finns join, and the Swedes, they still blocked the Swedes forever. And then Hungary was even worse, but Turkey was very bad. I think this is the Greeks kind of going, as we'd say in Greece, nah, which is kind of like FU in Greek, but it's nicer than FU, going like this in Greek, where they're kind of saying like, nah, 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 to the Turks, look who's being a good NATO ally. Greece is. To sort of just shore up that you can rely on the Greeks, even if you can't rely on the Turks. I think so. I mean, just in terms of Greek politics, what a Greek politician is thinking, I think it's interesting that the Greeks sort of put their neck out as the first country to be sending a military trainer to Ukraine. And yes, Greece is in NATO. Yes, Greece is definitely in NATO. So it's very interesting that the Greeks sent the first open trainer. Like I said, there were rumors, or I think the French may have even spilled the beans recently, that there were other NATO trainers in Ukraine, but the first sort of open one that we've acknowledged is the Greeks going, which is very interesting. The Greeks have F-16s, yes, but the Greeks are now getting F-35s. Now, again, I'm a foreign policy guy. The military folks here can tell us whether Greece has gotten any F-35s yet, but I know up until now, they've had F-16s. Military guys and gals, do they even have, A, do they have any F-35s yet? And B, they certainly still have F-16s. Just curious, folks are saying. Thank you, Pam, for the star. Just curious, people, really quick. Any quick? Always takes a couple seconds for you guys to catch up whenever I ask questions. So thank you, adventurers, for sharing the live. Waiting a minute here to see what you say about Greece. F-35 is the newer plane. Yes. Okay, not seeing any answers yet. Thank you, adventurers. Thank you, Chef, for the gifts. Okay, not seeing any answers, but I think you guys are always behind in terms of when I ask questions. How do I read and speak at the same time? Years of experience. Quite literally. Quite literally. Thank you, Jorge. Quite literally. No, this is an old coffee. One of you, okay, I don't know if you're still here. Way back at the beginning, 2 years ago, one of you sent me this. Now, actually, it was sent to me on behalf of somebody else. So somebody else had my address. So the other person wanted to send me this from Minnesota and sent me this really pretty Duluth, Minnesota coffee mug. But I can't remember who it was. So thank you if you're still out there. It was very sweet of you. It was a woman. I can't remember who now. Thank you, Hannah. Okay. Looking at the wiki, the first orders of F-35s arrive in 2028. Okay. So that's not for several years. There we go. Thank you, Hannah. And the Greeks, well, interesting. The Turks kind of screwed the pooch, as we say in American English. Maybe the Brits say the same, because as I recall, they bought a Russian anti-aircraft system. Was it the S-400 guys, I think? And they so pissed off NATO in the U.S. because what are they doing buying like Russian military systems, right? Turkey's a NATO member, that the U.S. turned around and said, fine, we're not going to sell you F-35s. You like the Russians? get their planes, and we turned around and sold the F-35s to the Greeks instead. And Greece and Turkey are always like this in competition. So very interesting little slight for the Turks there. Little more here. The 24 F-16 fighter jets that Netherlands will be transferring to Ukraine may be used to strike targets inside Russia, according to the Dutch defense minister. That's great. Some news I saw online about the Russian economy, just one of the sort of military experts I follow on Twitter was saying that basically Russian economy not doing as well as the Russians want you to think, which frankly makes sense, because I think one of the things that's confused a lot of us has been, since the beginning of the war, we have been told, thank you, Jonathan, for the gift. We've been told, mind you, from the beginning of the war, we were told that the sanctions on Russia would not bring Russia to its knees. They would not force Russia to give up the war, right? We knew that. But they were meant to make it much harder for Russia to prosecute the war, and frankly, a long-term punishment for Russia, so that eventually maybe they learn something from this. And honestly, other countries learn as well. Right? Other belligerents, potential belligerents, look at China and Taiwan, for example. Thank you. I'm going to call you Nico, soldier, since I never know what N1CO is. I'm going to call you Nico in the future. And thank you, Birdie, as well. That it also sends a message to other countries like China around the world that you're going to suffer crippling sanctions too if you go after Taiwan. Thank you, Crazy American. In any case, the Russian economy, they're looking at raising taxes across the board: value-added tax, income tax, profit tax, excise taxes on real estate. Putin had promised, is it non-commissioned officer? I thought it was non-com, but I wasn't sure. Oh, that's what N1CO. Okay, I wasn't sure if it was non-com. I've never sort of seen it written as an abbreviation. Okay, I'll call you non-com then in the future. They're raising taxes across the board. Putin had promised he wasn't going to raise taxes, which is interesting. Because basically it means things aren't going as well as he thought. There's a large budget deficit because of the war, of course. Inflation is officially at 8%, but it is more likely 15 to 20%. Mind you, we're complaining in the U.S. because our inflation rate's at 3%. Now, at one point it did go up 10%. I mean, or 8 to 10%, which was, or maybe 8.5, 9%, which is a lot. And for us, it's a lot because it hasn't gone up like that in decades. The Russians are looking at 15 to 20%. Interest rates. Our interest rates are now, are they around 7%? Actually, well, it depends what we mean by interest rates, first of all. Whether we mean, what is it, the Fed fund rate, or whether the rate it is that people pay for mortgages. I'm not sure. I think this is the central bank rate. U.S. interest rates are at, in terms of the Fed, what's the Fed rate at now, guys? Is it 6, 7%? What's the Fed rate? 6, 6.5 maybe? I could ask Alexa, but I think Alexa's going to get it confused. Alexa, what's the Federal Reserve interest rate in America?
As of June 2024, the United States' central bank target interest rate is 5.5%.
Oh, 5.5. Oh, that's low. I mean, that's relatively low. Mike had it closer than everybody else. Actually, Mike and Julian and Bearded, yeah. So like 5.25, 5.5% in the U.S. interest rates. In mortgages are therefore a little higher. In Russia, the interest rates are around 16%, and they think they're going to raise them. Okay? Again, these are the things you got to think about, right? Now, the Russians kind of have this thing of buckling down, and because it's also a dictatorship, mind you, in many ways, right? So like it's not like the people are going to rise up, but thank you, Kronos. They're suffering 16% interest rates. They're suffering 15 to 20% inflation. And their taxes are being raised on them, okay? Imagine that was you would not be happy. And let's see how the war goes. Because currently, even though Ukraine's having a hard time, Russia's having a hard time too. Thank you, Rich. Appreciate the hair comment. Thank you, Brian, for the gift as well. It's not like the Russians have an out here. Ukraine, it is going to be difficult for Ukraine to figure out what comes next. And a lot of it's going to be dependent on what weapons we give them, et cetera, and what we let them do with those weapons. But Russia's in the same boat. What the hell does Russia do to get out of this war, right? Russia's stuck just as much as Ukraine is. And remember, that's what America, hey, we had it in Iraq. We had it in Afghanistan. We had it in Vietnam. You get into wars where sometimes you're losing and sometimes you're just not really winning, right? Like Afghanistan and Iraq, we just weren't quite winning. And at some point after 20 years, you spent so much money that you've got to leave. The Russians had the same thing in Afghanistan themselves in the 1980s. Russia's in a weird position now where they did grab a chunk of Ukraine, right? They control 18% of Ukraine. But right now, Russia's kind of stuck. And it's not clear in the same way that all of us worry about what comes next for Ukraine, what's going to happen in a year, what's going to happen in 2 years. Can Ukraine really advance, right? Thank you, Jane. What's Russia going to do? What's Russia going to do? How are they going to finish? How are they going to end the war, right? How are they going to pull out? As soon as they, by the way, as soon as the Russians pull out of the, let's say Russia says, okay, we're happy occupying 18% of Ukraine. Thank you, Super Hornet. What if the Russians pull out? The Ukrainians will take the land back. They're going to say, okay, great. Happy to take it. Oh, good. Okay, she's around, Rob. Okay, good. The Duluth woman had some health issues. Oh, that's too bad. You've not seen her. Oh, you haven't seen her. Oh, God. Okay. Oh, God, I hope she's okay. Sorry about that. All right, let's go on here. Thank you, Running. Thank you, Macabre, for the gifts. Please keep the gifts coming, guys. Remember, I love gifts. I mean, I love gifts like Ava's chocolate, but I very much appreciate your gifts because I do this full time and I do it for free. And the way I'm able to keep doing this show is with your gifts. I literally pay my bills and make a living doing this. No one's paying me. You pay me. So please keep them coming. And thank you very much. And you don't have to. If you can't afford it, don't worry. If you can't afford it, though, please consider. Thank you, Brian, Jeremy, Doughboy, Brian again, Rocco, Doughboy, Luca, Magic. Lots of gifts here. Thank you, guys. And you can always pay me in chocolate. Although Ava gave me a lot of chocolate. Okay, I'm going to show you. There's one. Sorry, like one of our Swedish friends here with us today, Ava, sent a ton of chocolate, a ton of candy, but possibly my favorite was this. It's like a freaking Wonka bar. I mean, look at this. Thank you, Mike, for the gift. And thank you, Doughboy. Look at the size of this thing. It's the size of my head. I mean, no, I'm going to be working my way slowly through the bag of candy that Ava gave me. It is, as she said, it's almost 2 kilos of candy, which is almost 5 pounds of candy. So I'm going to be going through it slowly because we don't want to put the weight back on, but we're very appreciative. Which city have I had the best chocolate? That's hard to say. And thank you. Jens just bought a gift membership that went to Nordic Warrior. Thank you, Jens, for that. Very sweet. You guys can buy gift memberships on TikTok and YouTube that basically it's a 1-month subscription just to support my work. It gives you like some emojis and you can come to our Saturday show and stuff, but you can buy them for other people, which is kind of nice. And they get it for a month. It's like a 1-month thing. Thank you, Mikey, for the gift there. I don't know the city that I've had the best chocolate is hard to say because we're so globalized now. Thank you, user 336. Thank you, Mikey. I've had chocolate from everywhere, so it's kind of hard to say the best. I mean, I really do enjoy like Ghirardelli, 72% Ghirardelli chocolate. I have to say, I like it a lot. Like I like to have it as a snack because it's relatively healthy for you. It's not too much sugar, but there's enough sugar that I like it. Having said that, still like a good chocolate bar that's really good. I've always liked Nestle's Crunch Bars, believe it or not. It's kind of, Nestle's in America is kind of not the best chocolate, but their Crunch Bar with the crunchy stuff inside. Cadbury's, the Cadbury's that have the caramel inside. Did they call it, or was there another one called Caramello? I remember Caramello. Maybe that's the Cadbury one. Oh my God. The Milka from Sweden is fabulous. Toblerone, never, you know what? I've never loved Toblerone. It's okay. I know it's a huge deal in Europe. Anyway, it's very Carmelo. No, it was either Carmelo or Caramello or something, but it was the name of the caramel-filled chocolate. Oh my God. Anyway, we'll have to figure out how you guys can send me stuff because as you can, and thank you, Offrey. I appreciate the offer. As you can imagine, I don't kind of want my address out there because of all the crazies, but I would love you to send me chocolate from all over the world. So we'll need to figure out a way of doing this safely, but we'll figure it out. Marabou, actually, Caroline, I would say half the candy that Ava sent me is Marabou. This is the big chocolate. It's Marabou. So yeah, half the candy, because Ava, you're over on TikTok. Who is this? Vernon, or not Vernon. I'm already lost it. Was asking if I've tried Marabou. Oh, Caroline was asking. And yes. No, Sasha, get in here. Sasha. My dog likes to hang outside, except when she hangs outside, she eats sticks. And then she wakes up at 4 a.m. Oh, we're still doing news. People were asking about chocolate, so, But I'm trying to hey, Sasha, get in here. Come on. Oh, she's so bad. over here. She's so freaking bad. My dog. She likes to go out, so I let her out. But she's literally sitting here and going really slow and stopping at each little stick and trying to eat it. Get in here. Get in here. She's a pound too heavy. I weighed her today. She's a pound too heavy. And when you're a 10-pound dog, a pound too heavy is like too heavy, right? So she's on a little bit of a diet. So she's not going to be happy. Like, she shouldn't be hungry yet, but later tonight she might be a little hungry because I literally am weighing her food now because I had to. Long story. The news is now resuming. We had a little bit of a break for chocolate and dogs. Anybody who watches the show knows this is part of the show. Thank you, Alex. The dog intervenes occasionally, and in this case, chocolate intervenes as well. All right. 10% too heavy is bad for a dog, though. Imagine yourself. For me, that would be 16 pounds. Right? I mean, think about it, right? It's a lot. All right, let's keep going, guys. Kamala Harris. So Vice President Kamala Harris is going to be attending the Global Peace Summit in Switzerland, the Peace Summit for Ukraine. Biden will not be attending. He has some fundraisers here, and it's right before the election. It's like 3 or 4 months before the American election. Thank you, Simeon. 3 or 4 months before the American election, and I think Biden's worried about appearances, that it would look bad. Actually, and now, of course, I'm gonna have to get her water soon too, because I forgot to do that. I think he's afraid it'll look bad that he's leaving the country. Americans don't like that kind of thing, you know? So anyway, yes, Rem Dog, I know I love this shirt. It's my new Uniqlo shirt. Zelensky. So this was interesting. Zelensky accused China of trying to sabotage the peace summit in Switzerland that they're having shortly, middle of July. I want to say middle of July. I don't think it's middle of June. I think it's middle of July. And he accused the Chinese of trying to sabotage it. Very interesting. He went to the defense summit that was happening in Singapore this past couple of days. Zelensky showed up and said that China's pressuring other countries and their leaders not to attend the summit. Oh, it's the middle of June, actually. July is the Olympics in Paris. The middle of June is the peace summit in Switzerland. That the Chinese are pressuring other countries not to attend. He said Russia, using Chinese influence in the region, using Chinese diplomats also, does everything to disrupt the peace summit. Regrettably, this is unfortunate that such a big, independent, powerful country as China is an instrument in the hands of Putin. I thought that was very interesting. Right? I mean, really kind of not rude, but really in your face of Zelensky to be doing that. Thank you, Sean. Right. Very interesting. Because the Chinese don't like that. The Chinese don't like to get called out on stuff. They like to, the Chinese love to push their weight around. The Chinese are as belligerent and obnoxious as the Russians in terms of the government and what they do internationally. In Asia, the Chinese are just big bullies. But they don't like being called on it. And they like this perception of China as being this mature and polite, people who just want to get along and have peace and this kind of crap. And then they just throw their weight around and crap on everybody all over Asia. And everybody knows it. It was at one point during this defense summit, thank you, Courtney, one of the Chinese, he wasn't the Chinese defense minister. He was called the defense minister, but he was apparently the number 2 Chinese defense guy. Thank you, Courtney, for the gift. And Sean. And he got up there in his speech and he talked about how China is a force for peace in Asia and we just get along with our neighbors. We never pressure them and we never, this kind of stuff. People in the room, I think, literally rolled their eyes when he started saying this. I think some people might have even laughed because it was just, everybody in Asia knows China is the big bully of Asia, especially with the Philippines, Vietnam, some other countries. They're literally provoking war with the Philippines, for example, because they know the Philippines can't defend itself. Now, we can defend the Philippines, and we promise to defend the Philippines, which is why the U.S. is there and why it's a good thing that the U.S. is there. And it's important that we don't get presidential candidates, thank you, Lisa, who want to pull the U.S. out of Asia, like some people I won't name. But anyway, thank you for who is that? Lisa, thank you for the gift. Anyway, also, China is messing around a little bit with Russia in terms of gasoline sales, or gas, I should say, natural gas. Listen to this. This was from the Financial Times. Russia is attempting to conclude a major gas pipeline deal with China. The deal has run aground over what Moscow sees as Beijing's unreasonable demands on price and supply levels. The people familiar with the matter say China has asked to pay close to Russia's heavily subsidized domestic prices and would only commit to buying a small fraction of the pipeline's planned annual capacity. So basically, the Chinese want to pay the same price the Russians charge Russians. Basically the subsidized price within Russia, and they're only promising to buy a little bit of the gas. Thank you, Marie. Very funny. Approval of the pipeline would transform the dire fortunes of Gazprom, Russia's state gas export monopoly, by linking the Chinese market to gas fields in Western Russia that once supplied Europe. Thank you, Elizabeth. Big problem here is that these gas fields, as it said, provided Western Europe or Western and Eastern Europe, and the Europeans cut off because of the Ukraine invasion. They successfully cut themselves off of Russian gas, which is great. Gazprom suffered a loss of 692 billion rubles, or $6.9 billion last year, the biggest loss in at least a quarter of a century. Anyway, so kind of fun that even though China and Russia are in this, like, what do they call it? An unlimited friendship, or whatever they keep calling it. Like, we will help each other in every way. The Chinese are totally trying to screw over the Russians over energy prices, which is hilarious because they know the Russians are in trouble. Thank you, Jen. They know the Russians are in trouble. The Russians need money, and the Chinese are basically just sticking it to them. I'm sorry. I find it very funny because it just goes to show you kind of, you think they're your friends, but maybe frenemies is more like it. Italy will send a second SAMP-T air defense system to Ukraine, the only European-made system that can intercept ballistic missiles, also known as Mamba. It is a Franco-Italian battery that can track dozens of targets and intercept 10 at once. Rome and Paris jointly delivered the first system in 2023. Speaker of the Georgian parliament has signed into law the controversial foreign agents law. This is a Russian-style law that the Georgian government, Georgia being the country of Georgia, right, former Soviet, the Georgian government the parliament passed in order to clamp down on pro-democracy groups in the country. It is a law that Putin is using to oppress pro-democracy groups in Russia, and the Georgian parliament, who unfortunately the lead party, the Georgia Dream Party, is basically they're a pro-Russian party. They're certainly leaning towards dictatorship and leaning towards Russia, even though, putatively Georgia wants to join NATO and Georgia wants to join the EU. This party is a little too friendly with the Russians and frankly thinks like the Russians in the sense of the dictatorial way that the Russians clamp down on free speech and throw pro-democracy groups in jail. Very sad. Very sad. Washington Post. Okay, this was an interesting story from the Washington Post. Okay, and I raised this because it deals with Russian influence in Europe, Russia paying legislators behind the scenes. And it makes me wonder, Russia has paid so much money to corrupt right-wing politicians in Europe, and also the far left as well in Europe. Thank you, Adventures. It makes me wonder, is it really possible that Russia hasn't paid any money to far-right American politicians or far-right American political groups or far left, the extremist left, right? They're doing it in Europe, but they haven't done it in America. Really? Really? Listen to this. This is from the Washington Post. An associate of one of Russian President Putin's closest allies launched a pro-Kremlin media outlet in Prague, Czech Republic in May of 2023. For nearly a year, European intelligence officials said the Czech authorities secretly recorded hours of meetings between several far-right politicians from across Europe and the associate Artem Marchevsky, who was running the propaganda website Voice of Europe. See, they called it Voice of Europe, like we do Voice of America, Voice of Europe, to make it sound like, oh, it's a European project. It actually was a Russian propaganda outlet, Russian government run. The Czech probe rapidly expanded into Belgium, Germany, the Netherlands, Poland, and France. European security and intelligence officials said, as investigators concluded that the Voice of Europe represented far more than its official veneer as a pro-Russian website interviewing favored European politicians about ending aid to Ukraine. This is a Washington Post I'm reading. The organization was being used to funnel hundreds of thousands of euros up to 1 million a month. 1 million euros is around $1 million, guys. So they were putting out up to $1 million a month, okay, out there bribing European officials to dozens of far-right politicians in more than 5 countries in order to plant Kremlin propaganda in Western media that would sow division in Europe and bolster the position of pro-Russian candidates in this week's European Parliament elections, according to interviews with a dozen European intelligence officials from 5 countries. Is there any chance that Russia is spending $1 million a month in that we know of in Europe on far-right politicians, but they're not spending that money in America on far-right politicians as well? I mean, we often ask ourselves why it is Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, right, a number of these Republican parties, actually the Heritage Foundation, the number one Republican think tank that now is 100% in Russia's pocket. You know, we ask ourselves, why is it all these groups or people like Trump are so sycophantic to Russia? Why is it that they're so quick to turn on America's values and America's national security and basically not just saddle up to one of our greatest enemies, but accept the argument of one of our greatest enemies? And then Marjorie Taylor Greene, all these people. And then we find out that the Russians are paying $1 million a month to far-right European politicians. Again, I don't know who they're paying off in America. I would bet my chocolate from Ava in Sweden, my bag of chocolate, that somebody in America is being paid off by the Russians. Because why would they be doing it in Europe and why not do it here? Right? Maybe, right. This was interesting. Oh, this story I'm trying to get my sort of noggin around. Listen to this. Exclusive videos obtained by the Kyiv Post from sources within Ukraine's military intelligence show Ukrainian special forces and Syrian rebels destroying Russian mercenaries in Syria. So Ukrainian special forces joined together with the Syrian opposition and basically killed Russian mercenaries in Syria. The HUR special squad, in collaboration with the Syrian opposition, is attacking Russian mercenaries fighting alongside the Assad regime in Syria. The thing I'm trying to figure out is, why is Ukraine doing this? I mean, I'm really interested. Now, obviously, they're killing Russians. I mean, it's right. Ukraine's at war with Russia. I get it, right? You're killing Russian soldiers there. Now, all I can think of is, and the reason I say why are they doing it is, you'd say, well, sure, why wouldn't Ukraine going after Russian soldiers? That's not the way it works. Ukraine only has so many men. They only have so many weapons. They only have so much bandwidth, like effort to do stuff. They're trying to save their country right now. Why would they go? I mean, is it like 1,000 miles away? Right? I mean, what's the distance there? Alexa, what's the difference between Kyiv? Alexa, what's the distance between? Alexa, quiet. It's like my dog. Thank you, John, for the gift. Alexa, what is the distance between Kyiv, Ukraine, and Damascus, Syria? She's so fucking stupid sometimes. Alexa, what is the distance between Kyiv, Ukraine, and Damascus, Syria?
Syria is 1,162 miles from Kyiv as the crow flies.
Okay. Alexa, stop. Oh, you know what drives me nuts too? It literally is like, does that answer your question? It's like, shut the F up. Like, answer the question and move on, guy. Like, what is this? So 1,100 miles, 1,500 kilometers as the crow flies. I love that too. 1,500 kilometers or 1,100 miles. Why would the Ukrainians go that far to hurt Russian mercenaries? Why wouldn't you use those troops? I think you're running for the tiny. Why wouldn't you use those troops to go after, troops in Russia? I don't know. I'm very curious. I mean, Muster's saying, imagine soldier or supplies exchange. I don't know. I mean, I'm very intrigued. The only reason I raise it is because Ukraine doesn't have the extra men to spare. They don't have the extra weapons to spare. So why would they go abroad to do this rather than fighting at home? Having said that, there's a reason they're doing it. They're not stupid. Thank you. Who's it? Al? Polonik. There's a reason they're doing it. And it's probably a very smart reason, and I'd love to know what. And they're also doing stuff in Africa too. Joshua says, yes, Ukraine was also going after like Wagner mercenaries in Africa as well. So there's some benefit. I mean, you kill Russian mercenaries in Syria or Africa. Thank you, Timothy. And you make the Russians have to replace them and maybe take troops that would otherwise go to Ukraine and send them to Africa instead. So I get that, but isn't it easier just to kill Russian troops in Russia or in Ukraine and make them replace those troops? Like, there's something going on behind the scenes that's very interesting. Now, that's interesting. Krister says they're getting weapons from a Syria supporter. I mean, honestly, Callum disagrees with me. It made me wonder whether Israel has a role here, whether somehow Ukraine is helping. Now, Israel has been a shitty ally to the Ukrainians. Ukraine is one of the biggest defenders of Israel internationally. Thank you, Papi Chulo. And Israel has been the shittiest ally on the planet, especially a country like Israel that A, needs friends, B, when you got a friend like Ukraine today, when a lot of people are kind of embarrassed to be your friend, you should be doubly thankful of somebody who stands by you now. And C, because of Israel's unique history, they should understand, like, when a country's facing genocide, when a country's facing somebody trying to wipe them out. It's kind of disgusting, Israel's sort of position vis-a-vis Ukraine, but maybe there's some little deal there as well. I would love to know. There's something going on, though. There's something going on. It's very interesting. Russians behaving badly. So listen to this. Thank you, Jordan. Russians behaving badly. The BBC reports that someone, and of course, everyone thinks it's the Russian government, of course, someone put like 5 coffins outside the Eiffel Tower in Paris, like 5 empty coffins. Thank you, aviation. Well, the French police, they did a very bad job of it. The French police like arrested the driver that like dropped off the coffins. The driver, let me pull this up. The driver was Bulgarian, had just arrived in Paris. He sent the police to catch the other 2 guys who were involved. The other 2 guys were from Ukraine, and I'm trying to remember the other one. I don't think it said where the other one was. Bulgarian? Oh, Ukraine and German. So Bulgarian, Ukrainian, and German paid by somebody else to basically dump the coffins near the Eiffel Tower. And inside the coffin was a note that said something like, "These are the body of dead French mercenaries killed in Ukraine." It was a propaganda campaign to basically hurt Ukraine support in France. And the French authorities are saying it was the Russian government. This is the kind of and I've mentioned this before, there is an immaturity, there is a third world mentality. I hate to sort of use phrase, I'm not sure what phrase to use, to the Russian government in terms of the way they act. They do not act in a mature way. They do not act as an adult in the room kind of country. It's not just clumsy, it's immature, it's childish. It's the kind of thing a teenager would do, a teenage boy would do, right? It's a little savage. It's primitive, not a bad word for it too. But the notion that like you'd go in and dump coffins at the Eiffel Tower because you think it's going to like convince the French, oh my God, yeah, infantile, that is a good word, Jeff. Like, oh my God, it's going to convince the French no longer to support Ukraine. And by the way, the other BS the Russians have been doing, we've talked about this. They've been causing all sorts of problems around Europe. Remember, they interfered with the GPS systems of planes in Eastern Europe, like knocking out the geolocation systems of airplanes in Eastern Europe just to be jerks about it. The Russian troops went and removed the border buoys, the buoys between Russia and I believe it was Estonia. And they removed the buoys in the water, the markers in the water that help ships and boats and fishermen delineate what side of the border is Russia, what side is Estonia. And the Russian troops went and removed the buoys just to be obnoxious. I mean, again, it's childish, guys. I will say this. If that's the best Russia's got, that tells you something, right? The best Russia can do is dump a bunch of coffins. Remember at the beginning of the war too? And we knew it was the Russians. When they sent, what did they send? Like feces and dead animals and things to Western embassies across Europe, and thinking like, oh, I mean, but seriously, 13-year-old boy mentality in the Russian government, right? That you're sending a dead animal in the mail, and that's going to convince us, oh gosh, I guess I'm no longer going to defend freedom and democracy and stand up to Russia trying to start World War III in Europe because they sent a dead animal to my embassy. It's I mean, Flapjack says supervillain stuff. It's worse than supervillain stuff. It's comedic supervillain stuff. It's not even Godfather. The Godfather knew what he was doing. This is Juvenile. The Godfather did not do Juvenile. I mean, right, the Godfather movie, when you looked at the Godfather or the Mafia, you don't look at the Mafia and go, they do such childish things. They don't do childish things. They do scary things, right? This is childish. You laugh at this. You look at it and go, I mean, literally, you mailed feces and dead animals to embassies because you thought that was going to make a difference? What kind of a child does that? What kind of like inferior person does that? It's just screwed. It's like it's Austin Powers evil, basically. Yeah. Any case, it's really screwed up. Actually, that's the final story. That is the final story. Let me show you the auction items. We've got auctions. Our auctions are ending on Friday. Every Friday. Every week we do auctions of cool stuff from Ukraine. I auction it off on our Discord community, which I'll send you to in a second. And half the money from the auctions goes to support Ukraine. We just send it straight back. The other half goes to support me because I do this full time. This is my job. So that's why I'm always hitting you guys up for gifts, because your gifts help me a lot to pay my bills. So thank you. But we've got a number of cool auction items this week. Discord you can find and the auctions by going over on TikTok or YouTube. You can go to aravosis.com and mylastname.com, and you'll see a list of links. It's a Linktree site. Top one is Discord. Click it. You're there. On TikTok, you also can just go to my profile on TikTok, click the Linktree link there. It's the only URL in my profile on TikTok. And again, the first thing that comes up is Discord. Click it and go over. Well, among the auctions, this item is probably the neatest we've got. It is a pin. You can sort of see the relative size against me. It is a pin, 2 pins on the back to hold it on your shirt. Each one is unique because it's sort of shattered glass. It is the shape of a home from Ukraine, shattered glass, Ukrainian heart, the 2 colors of Ukraine, blue and gold or blue and yellow. Trying to get it in focus for you guys here. Not as easy on YouTube as TikTok. What is neat about this is these were being sold or are being sold by a charity in Ukraine. They're not mailing them out of the country, so we had to buy them there, and Vlad sent it out. They're being done by a charity in Ukraine that each one of these that we purchased, I purchased them, each one of these that we purchased buys 1 therapy session for a Ukrainian child basically damaged by the war. So it's kind of a neat gift anyway, but they're really pretty. So please do go over and bid, and each one's basically it's like a shattered home. It's a home that's been shattered. Very pretty. A couple other things. We've got some cool Ukrainian stamps. These are commemorating the Ukrainian military, all the different military branches. A couple other things. Actually, this is very nice. We've got a neat table runner, I'm going to call it. But the thing that runs across the middle of the table, Ukrainians use these at special holidays like Easter. This one is from the 1950s, 1960s. Vlad got it in southwestern Ukraine. And it's handmade, you can see, very cool, in the Ukrainian Vyshyvanka style, basically. The Ukrainian Petrikivka designs, basically. And it's very pretty, handmade. And again, this one's very long. I've got the actual length here. You can see the stitching on the back to get a sense of how it's stitched, any of you who know stitching. But very cool. It's from the, like I said, 1950s, 1960s. Vlad got it from a family in southwestern Ukraine, the family made it. And again, the mother or grandmother made it back in the 1950s, 1960s. And the family is of origin Ukrainian, Hungarian, and Slovak. And Vlad said, when you look at the pattern, because he bought a number of different things, you can see sort of the influence of all 3 in the work they did, which is very neat. So that's another auction item over at our Discord. The last one I'll show you for tonight, and then we'll do more tomorrow, is my personal favorite. And we've only had 1 person bid on this, and there better be more people because I was going to keep this. And I didn't keep it because Callum always yells at me and says, you're not allowed to keep the auction items. You've got to sell them. It is Grogu Baby Yoda t-shirt dressed as a Ukrainian fighter. He's got like Ukrainian fighter outfit on and the Ukrainian trident. Oops, over here, the Ukrainian trident. I freaking love this shirt. I would pay good money for this shirt. We've got 1 bid. I want more because this is the coolest freaking t-shirt ever. I don't care what it is. I mean, like literally, I told you I was going to keep this thing. It's a size medium. I will say it fit me perfectly. I am between an American medium and a large. Most American mediums, although I will say this is a Uniqlo medium I'm wearing right now. And you can see how it fits me. It's a little tight, but it fits. This one fit me loosely almost. It was looser than this. So I would put this size as being between an American medium and an American large. So in any case, Vlad, maybe he couldn't at the actually. And I should have said, and the shirts were being sold, I believe, by the Ukrainian military to make money for the military. It was a fundraiser. So it was like a Ukrainian military cake sale, basically. I should have said that. I forgot to mention that. There were only two when Vlad, he was at like a local festival in the southwest of Ukraine. There were only two of the shirts available. We auctioned one. Well, I'm going to try to auction it anyway. We'll see. But hopefully he'll be able to get more because it is a very cool shirt. I was like, Grogu. Oh, the coffee mug. I'm forgetting. Okay, I'll show you one more thing. This is the Russian warship Go F Yourself coffee mug from Ukraine. Ukrainian, stamped on the bottom, Ukrainian ceramics, made in Ukraine. And it says in Ukrainian, Ruski Voyny Koral Itsi Nahui, which, and again, with my poor Ukrainian, means Russian warship Go F Yourself. Except it doesn't say F, it actually says F and then many other letters. On the back of it is the ship, the Moskva. This is the ship that the Ukrainians sank the 6th week of the war. It is also, and this was the Russian flagship. I mean, disaster that they sank this ship for the Russians. But also, this is the ship, the first, so 6th week of the war, the Ukrainians sank the ship. 1st week of the war, the first day of the war, the Russian ship goes, and it goes to the Ukrainian island. And the Ukrainian island was Snake Island. And the Russian commander, and this is all recorded, and it became like a big international thing. The Russian commander says, Ukrainian warship, this is, or Ukrainian soldiers, this is Russian warship, surrender or we will destroy you. We will bomb you. And the Ukrainian commander on the ground replies, Russian warship, go F yourself. And the Russians were furious. They ended up capturing the island. Most of the guys survived. Prisoners of war got released. I think a few may have died. That's the famous saying in Ukrainian on the back. That's the warship. I only have one of these. And again, I would keep it. I don't need more coffee mugs. I have coffee mugs. This is a very cool coffee mug. I will say this is definitely one of the coolest sort of auction items we've had. So I will not keep exactly. We say Snake Island in English, Ongskunk. In Ukrainian, you guys say what is Zmini, Zmini. I'm going to go Zmini. Oh my God. Zmini. That's what I'm going to say. Zmini Ostrov. Because there's multiple, Ukrainian, like Russian, has multiple vowels together. So they like have EE next to each other, like EE. That was my bad pronunciation that hopefully wasn't too bad. Was that close enough, Marie? Well, because I see multiple E's next to each other and I'm like, oh God, this is not going to be easy. Hang on a second here. I'm just looking at some of the Ukrainians writing. Oh, it's in Russian. Okay. Oh, that is Russian. Oh, so this is Russian, what they said. Oh, so this is actually, so the response from the Ukrainian was in Russian? Just curious. The Ruski, was it Ruski Vani or Vani Koral? Is that Russian? Da. Oh, the text is in Russian. Oh, interesting. Okay, interesting, Ongskunk. I didn't realize that. Okay, very interesting. Now, mind you, Ukrainians speak Russian. I mean, a lot of Ukrainians speak Russian. It's sort of the other tongue of the country, not unlike, frankly, Canada and other bilingual countries where you've got chunk of the country speaks French, chunk of the country speaks English. In Ukraine, it's Russian and Ukrainian actually. And yeah, well, a lot of Ukrainians are like Vlad. Our friend Vlad grew up speaking Russian and then had to learn Ukrainian for school, which is interesting. The mugs are not for sale. The mug is auction over at our Discord community. So you go there, you bid, and the winning person gets the mug. International shipping is fine. You pay shipping anyway, so people, you'll pay for the shipping, but so you can order it anywhere. Just whatever it costs to send a coffee mug, I will send it. Domestic in the U.S. isn't very expensive. It might be $6. I don't. I have to look. International, international is not cheap because, that's the way international rates are. You know what I mean? But anyway, yeah, go to our Discord community. You can find it on TikTok. Go to my profile, look for the Linktree link, click it, and then look for Discord, click it, go over, sign up. It's free, and check out the auctions. All right. So anyway, let's hang out and talk, guys. Let's hang out and talk. That's true. Liz said he had to speak Russian so the ship would understand him. I guess that's true. Right. We don't know. Latuski is asking about the U.S. election, whether Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is going to take more votes away from Trump or Biden. Thank you, Claire. We don't know. There have been multiple polls sort of showing both. Some polls show more from Trump, some show more from Biden. It's going to be very state specific. Our elections are state specific. Just because you win the national vote doesn't mean you win the election. Hillary Clinton won the national vote by 3 million votes. She lost the election. Al Gore, 20 years before, won the national vote, 16 years before, actually, won the national vote by 500,000 votes. She lost the election. Democrats, mind you, are terrible at fighting for things. Had Republicans lost 2 presidential elections by winning the popular vote, they would have changed the system. Democrats kind of go, oh, well, what do you do? So in terms of how Kennedy will affect the vote, you'd have to look state specific. It's not enough to even look nationally, but we've seen both. We've seen him hurt Trump. We've seen him hurt Biden. So it's hard to say. RFK is horrible on Ukraine. RFK Jr., somebody was just asking, Ramiz was asking how he is on, I think you're talking about RFK Jr. on Ukraine and Russia. He's terrible on Ukraine. RFK Jr. spouts Russian talking points left and right. He issued a blistering statement this weekend criticizing Biden for letting Ukraine use American weapons to strike inside Russia. He picked up the Russian talking point and said, really horrific, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. repeated Russia's talking point about, oh, there's going to be nuclear war now because you're helping the Ukrainians. And he even said 90 million Americans are going to die. The son of a bitch actually said 90 million Americans are going to die in a nuclear war because Biden wants to help Ukraine. Okay? That tells you everything if you care about Ukraine, that tells you everything you need to know about RFK Jr. Ukraine. I've told you this before. He is a walking, talking Russian propagandist. He's also crazy, literally cuckoo. He's anti-vaccine. He thinks the polio vaccine is bad and hasn't helped people. The polio vaccine saved millions of children from becoming crippled. He's a bad man. He thinks there's no vaccines. He literally said last summer, we went through the fact checking on this before. You can Google it. RFK Jr. has said previously, last summer, mind you, not like when he was a kid, he says there isn't a single vaccine ever proven effective. What kind of bullshit is that, right? And there isn't a single vaccine ever proven safe. Again, what kind of bullshit is that? He's crazy, guys. But especially on the Ukraine stuff, if you care about Ukraine, man, RFK Jr. is terrible. The convicted felon is terrible. The convicted felon, Trump, cut off all aid to Ukraine 8 months ago. For 6 months, the U.S. wasn't giving any aid to Ukraine because Trump ordered MAGA in Congress to cut it off, and they did. Who do you think was thanking him? Vladimir Putin. It helped Vladimir Putin. The reason the Russians are doing better in Ukraine today is because of Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans who control the Republican Party and control the Congress. Leave them in power in Congress, and this is what you're going to get. Elect Trump as president, you're going to get Russian foreign policy. And, RFK Jr., you elect him, you're going to get brainworms. So, crazy stuff. Sword for Justice. Cadbury's Fruit and Nut Bar. Don't know that. I'm not as much of a fruit and nut kind of guy, though I'd try it and maybe it's good, And now they have F-16 fighters. We hope they do. Ukrainians are getting F-16 soon. There was some rumor as to whether they got some F-16s already. Who knows? Now Colin says Sweden has decided to send AWACS to Ukraine. When you say AWACS, do you mean AWACS the way we would spell it with a C, or is AWAK something else that I'm not familiar with? I'm only asking because I'm not a military guy, so sometimes I don't know all the military stuff. Do you mean AWACS, the advanced warning planes that have the cool pancake dome, crepe dome on top? Just curious. If so, that's great. The spy planes, excellent. So AWACS planes, basically, good. Very good. Very good. Is RFK compromised? I think he's crazy and stupid. I'm not convinced he's compromised, but who knows? It's the Swedish version. Oh, okay. Interesting. So it's the Swedish version of AWACS. How interesting. Oh, good for them. No, the Swedes, NATO, meaning Biden and the Germans, basically forced Sweden to not send fighter jets to Ukraine. I mean, the Swedes came out and said, somebody in NATO contacted us and told us don't send Ukraine fighter jets. So clearly it was the Americans or who else would it be? The Americans or the Germans. But clearly Biden, because in the end, Biden's the one that would have the say on sending, F-16, on sending, well, Biden would have the most weight, put it this way, of any NATO power. And they basically ordered the Swedes not to send planes, which is ridiculous, to Ukraine, not to send fighter jets. So the Swedes are making up for it with other planes and other things, which is really good for the Swedes. So, and I was getting pissed thinking the Swedes were dragging their feet. It looks like the Swedes were dragging their feet because, again, Biden was telling them not to do it, which is just lovely. We do believe Biden's making decisions because in the end, Biden's the one responsible. It's easy, frankly, and I know you sound like you're somebody who doesn't like Biden, but frankly, you're letting him off the hook. If you're saying Biden isn't making the decisions, you're letting him off the hook. Biden's advisors, I think, are terrified of Russia. Clearly, Jake Sullivan is national security advisor in the White House, terrified of Russia. Biden, I think, unfortunately, is scared of Putin. Biden's background is foreign policy. It's his expertise. The guy's old, but the guy's old. That's it. We know Biden's old. But as far as Biden being with it, there's been zero sign. Trump's the one who still thinks Barack Obama's president, right? Trump's the one who said crazy shit. If you want to talk about somebody whose mind isn't there anymore, Donald Trump's the one that repeatedly has said crazy stuff about who he thinks is president and all sorts of crazy stuff. What was the thing he said recently about Obama? He's convinced Barack Obama's still president. It's really kind of a scary thing. Biden doesn't do that. Biden's just old. And this is something, honestly, I almost wish the Biden people would just admit it and say, he's old, right? Trump's a criminal. We now know Trump's a convicted felon, right? He works with America's enemies. He hates America's troops. He's called them suckers and losers. He loves our enemies. He hates our allies. He hates NATO. Again, he committed multiple crimes. He's up on other crimes like giving away classified information. He actually slipped classified information to the Russians. He literally slipped classified information from the Israelis to the Russians in the Oval Office. Idiot that he is. Biden, he's old. Oh, I'm sorry. He's old and he's got a son who's kind of a piece of crap. His son's, I feel sorry for Biden's son because, he's a drug addict and a mess, right? But at the same time, he kind of seems like he's not the best guy. It's too bad. So yeah, Biden loves his troubled son and he's old. That's the worst you can say about him. Guess what? He's not a convicted felon 34 times over. I really do think the Biden people ought to say that. They ought to just admit it and go, yeah, he's old. He's old. Oh, Ethan, your kid is a reflection of you? Ethan, you really want to go there? Really? Have you met Donald Trump Jr.? Have you met Eric Trump? Seriously? Your kids are Donald Trump Jr. is the biggest freaking troll on the planet. How about your son-in-law? Is your son-in-law a reflection of you? Because Donald Trump's son-in-law got $2 billion with a B from Saudi Arabia, from the Saudi government. $2 billion. Okay? Ivanka. Trump becomes president. What do you think Trump's daughter did? His daughter that he said publicly he wishes he could marry his daughter. Not actually, marry wasn't quite the word he used. He didn't really care about marrying her. He wanted to do things to her. He said during an interview, I think it might have been Howard Stern, famous video out there, Google it. Ivanka, Trump becomes president. What do the Chinese do? Ivanka's been waiting for all these patents and stuff from China. The Chinese give it to her once Trump becomes president. So you're right. Thank you, Calman. You absolutely should. If you want to judge a president by their children, yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. Donald Trump Jr. Yeah, let's do that. The man who seems like he's had 20 cans of Coke every time he oops, hang on. My thing is falling down that I used to cover the sunlight. One moment. Up. There we go. This helps cut the sunlight out. There we go. It helps cut the sunlight out when I'm doing the show. But yeah, Donald Trump Jr., Mr. 20 cans of Coca-Cola every time he does a video. Yeah, let's judge it. Let's judge Trump by his children. Okay. Tiffany's okay. Barron seems okay. The other kids? Woo! Lee, give it a rest. You've been getting kind of ornery lately. Not sure what's going on. The mods have noticed. I didn't notice. Now I'm noticing. You need to like tone it down a bit. All right. What else, guys? What else? 7:15. We got a little more time. What else we got? UK election affecting Ukraine. The Brits here would have to tell you. I had asked this before to you guys. The Brits are having an election July 4th, American Independence Day. Ironically, our independence from Britain, but we like them now. But the Brits are having an election. It'll pick their new national government. At least as the polls are currently, it looks like the left will win, the Labour Party. Supposedly, they're just as strong on Ukraine as the right, at least from what you guys were telling me. Any of the Brits here got anything different to say? India has elections coming tomorrow. Mexico just elected a woman as president, which is very cool. That's kind of neat. Venezuela has elections. We met this really neat Venezuelan American chocolate maker in Georgetown yesterday. Arcade chocolates. They're very good. And he and his wife are lovely. And we were talking to them for like half an hour. But he was telling us about the Venezuelan elections in 2 months, and they're hoping this opposition person can win to bring sanity back to that country. Very interesting stuff going on. So, but yeah, the Indian elections are happening. But yeah, Nicola says Labor is very strong in aiding Ukraine. Good. That's what you guys have been telling me. So, oh, good. Jeff said the only thing I agree on with Starmer, Jeff, Starmer is it Keir Starmer, who's the opposition leader in Britain. He's not going to, though. What if Russia's Putin actually goes nuclear? What will happen? Well, I mean, he's not gonna, because here's what will happen. If Putin dropped a nuke on the United States, we would drop a nuke on him and he'd die, as would all of his citizens. He's not going to do that. If Putin dropped a nuke, and then now there's the simple option. There was talk of, what if the Russians just, thank you, Vladimir. What if the Russians just drop a nuke in Russia? They do a nuclear test. So there's a mushroom cloud, but in the middle of nowhere, Russia, just to scare us. Well, no one's going to care. So Russia does a nuclear test. Ooh, scary. People have been doing nuclear tests for 75 years. I don't care. I mean, I care in an environmental sense, right? In a sense of it'd be nice if we didn't start doing open air nuclear tests again and that kind of crap. But if Russia does one, why do I care if Russia nukes part of, middle of nowhere Russia? Who cares? Now, what if Russia drops a nuke in Ukraine? This is where it gets more interesting. One theory is that Putin could decide he wants to drop a nuke in the middle of nowhere Ukraine, right? Now, this is interesting. Let's say he uses a small nuke, and there are small nukes. There are small nukes, there are big nukes. So you can drop a nuke that isn't big enough to wipe out a city, right? It's just a smaller one. What if he does a small one in the middle of nowhere, so almost no one is injured? Then what, as a demonstration? Well, the problem you get is if Putin lights off a nuke at home in a test, I couldn't care less. Who cares? He does a nuclear test. Congratulations, big boy. So has India and Pakistan and everybody else. I couldn't care less. If Putin drops a nuke in the middle of nowhere Ukraine, doesn't kill anybody, doesn't hurt anybody, but decides to drop a nuke to be cool guy, then you've got a problem. Because, and that would be a classic Putin move. Putin likes to do stuff that just goes to the line of being, it's always obnoxious. But he goes to the line of basically like this: small nuke, middle of nowhere Ukraine. You don't kill anybody, but you make a point. Does the US respond with nukes? No. Does NATO go to war over it? I don't know, right? I mean, if he nuked Kyiv, the capital, we'd go to war. Absolutely. I think you would see Poland invade. You'd see the Baltic states invade. You'd probably see the Czech Republic, former general running the Czech Republic. You'd see a lot of NATO countries go to war with Russia, I think. And then the Brits would get involved. And then we go to war too. But if Putin sets off a nuke in the middle of nowhere, what happens, right? Because what Putin wants is basically to try to scare us into thinking, aha, look, I set a nuke off in the middle of nowhere Ukraine. Be scared. What will I do next? Well, first response I'd have is, well, you set the nuke off in the middle of nowhere Ukraine because you were afraid to do it in Kyiv or somewhere that mattered, because you knew we'd enter the war. And if we enter the war, you lose. And the Russians know it. And this is not bravado. If NATO enters the war, Russia loses not just the war in Ukraine, Russia loses the war with Russia and Ukraine, with Russia and the West. They will lose if they go to war with us. Okay. Thank you for the balloons over there on YouTube. So Russia doesn't want to do that. Because Russia knows it can't afford to go to war with us, Russia won't drop a nuke on Kyiv because then they go to war with us. They drop a nuke in the middle of nowhere. But the fact that they dropped a nuke in the middle of nowhere is because they're afraid of dropping it anywhere that matters. So, right? So it's not a good threat because I'd be horrified, and I think there ought to be pain for Russia to suffer if they drop a nuke anywhere in Ukraine. But at the same time, it would be telling you and me that they're afraid of dropping it somewhere that counts. So we shouldn't take it as a threat. We should take it as a sign of weakness, but also a sign of obnoxiousness. Now, the bigger problem for the West becomes, what do you do if Putin drops a nuke in the middle of nowhere in Ukraine, right? He hasn't killed anybody, right? He hasn't blown up a town, but it's still very obnoxious. What do you do? Is it enough of a reason to go to war? Is it enough of a reason for NATO to get involved and blow up Russian troops around Ukraine, right? Because that could lead to more war. That's the kind of thing Putin's good at. He's good at going just up to the line of obnoxiousness, but just, or the line of war, but one line short or one step short of a declaration of war against NATO, so we wouldn't be sure what to do. That gets confusing, I admit. The other question is, Antro just asked on TikTok, what would China do? It's not just China. What would China and India do? The thinking is that Putin was thinking of possibly using nukes in Ukraine, maybe September of 2022, when the Ukrainians just beat the crap out of the Russians and really pushed them out. Russia controlled twice as much land in Ukraine as they control now, and the Ukrainians pushed them out. Putin was not happy. He was considering dropping a nuke, if anything, just to freak the Ukrainians out. The thinking is, we told him privately what would happen next, right? You drop a nuke, you're going to war with us and NATO. And if you think you can beat us, not even that, you can't beat us. We will destroy you. Okay, first problem. Second problem is, the thinking is that the Chinese and the Indians weighed in with Putin and told him, you better not use nukes, because if you do, our relationship is over. So that becomes the question. Does Putin lose not just international support overall, but does he lose the support of China and India? That becomes a big deal. Final point I would say is, for NATO, it becomes extremely difficult because we can't afford to have the message be sent that it's okay to use nukes in 2024. This is not World War II. It is not 75 years ago. It is not the beginning of the nuclear era. It is 2024. And if we let countries run around and use nuclear weapons, even if they say, well, we used it in the middle of nowhere, right? Not a nuclear test on your own soil, but you bombed another country with a nuke, even if it's the middle of nowhere, we have no choice but to basically have catastrophic consequences, because otherwise, Iran, who's trying to get a nuke, who will get a nuke at this point, we'll see, North Korea, India, Pakistan, they have nukes. Israel has nukes. You don't want to send the message to everyone else in the world who has nukes or who's about to get nukes, like Iran, that it's actually okay if you drop some nukes on your neighbors as long as you don't kill too many people. That's not the precedent, and the world won't do anything about it. If Russia uses a nuke, it's bad, because then I think you're talking about a boycott of Russian oil entirely. It would be which is a huge problem for the international economy. And here's the other problem: Donald Trump, convicted felon Donald Trump, is president when Russia uses a nuke. Then what happens? Then Europe goes to war, and America may not pick sides, or America, who knows, might even take Putin's side under Trump. Who knows? So then things get very dangerous, because Trump becoming president could lead to World War III. So who knows? So, no, it's a fascinating question on what happens. It's a fascinating question. But again, the answer tends to be, if you are weak towards Russia, if you appease Russia, if you give Russia the sense that they can get away with it, Russia will do more and more. It's World War II, guys. Actually, it's not just World War II. I think it's like the history of the world. When you let a bad man get away with something, he goes for more. he tastes blood and wants more. And Putin is the perfect example of this. I don't know if he got a haircut, but I got a haircut, Hunter. Anyway, Another question or two, and then we'll go, guys, because it's already 25 after, so we're getting to the end here. Well, Kenny, part of the problem is, or Kenny was asking, what if Russia uses a nuke on the land it claims in Ukraine? A couple different problems. One, Russia's going to nuke its own people, so to speak. That's bad. Two, it's not going to matter to the international community. Russia's illegally occupying Ukraine. Nobody recognizes it as Russia. Russia uses a nuke in occupied Ukraine, and it is the same thing as Russia nuking Ukraine as far as from a Western perspective. I don't think there's any chance of the West looking at it and going, oh, it's okay. I don't think so. So, anyway. Conway was a troll, Ash. I got rid of him. That wasn't even worth a warning. That was so off topic. And by the way, remember what I told you about the emojis? That's pure Russian. That's pure Russian. Yeah. Or I should say that's paid troll. That guy was a paid troll. Or at least an organized troll. Yeah. But anyway, I know you know. Ash knows her. Ashley is the troll queen. She knows her trolls. I will say that. It's okay. Better to wait. I've told the mods that I prefer us generally to give a troll a second chance to prove they're a troll, because sometimes they're not. Usually they are. Usually it's people that, and we can tell. I've been doing this for 30 years. 30 years I've been monitoring online communities and running them. So I'm very good at identifying who's a bad actor. But sometimes it helps to give them one more chance, because usually they can't stop themselves. Do I pay Ashley? I pay Ashley with my love and affection and occasional visits to my dog. So, no. And I very much appreciate what Ashley does. And I certainly do not require any of them to be here. I'm shocked and appreciative of how much Ashley and Manda and Big Hawk and Callum and Sarah and some of the others do to help out with moderating. So thank you guys. Anyway, beep, 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 beep. Oh yeah, Harris will run with Biden, of course. Dinner is, I already started dinner before the show, and I'm going to finish it after. There's a very nice shawarma frozen meal from Trader Joe's that's very good that I like. And I made a little tahini lemon sauce and a little yogurt on it. It's very good. I did have their empanadas though. Their chicken empanadas suck, by the way. The most disgusting thing I've ever eaten from Trader Joe's. And I bought their little mini croissants. Don't buy them. They're bad. They're pure butter. Again, I lived in France. These things were pure butter. They were gross. So do not buy the mini croissants from Trader Joe's, and do not buy the empanadas. They're disgusting. Otherwise, the frozen shawarma thing, very good. Very good. So, they're Middle Eastern bread. I've not tried that. I'll try that. Okay. Is it like a thin bread kind of thing? Like a pita kind of thing? Or what is it? I'll have to check it out. Okay. I'm always looking for I make my own bread, but I'm always looking for new bread anyway. You know what I mean? Good night, Colin. Pitas. I'll look and see next time I go. Cause I usually walk by the bread thing. And clam chowder. Ooh, they have good clam chowder. Is it in cans, I'm assuming, or what? Ooh, I'll have to look for that. Trader Joe's is an American supermarket, kind of high end, but most of their prices are cheap. Some of this, if you buy eggs or milk there, you're paying too much. But a lot of their frozen food is it's very high end and very cheap. Love Swedish meatballs. Shrimp boa buns. I don't know what shrimp boa buns. I don't know what those are. Are those wrapped dip in sauce, Chinese, heat them up? Although that sounds like it's Vietnamese or something else. I'm forgetting what we call them. I would always get them at Chinese. Dumplings. Are those kind of like dumplings? Like pot stickers, exactly. Dumplings. Okay. I don't know those. I will try some of those soon. Trader Joe's is very good. Very good. Very good. My old lady's my mom. Trader Joe's gyro marinated chicken. Interesting. Don't know that. Chinese steamed buns. I'll have to try. I don't know any of I haven't tried much of the Asian. I did buy some of the orange chicken because I know it's bad for you, but I love orange chicken. So I did buy some of the orange chicken. Chimichurri rice. Not sure. Anyway, Anyway, hotcakes and pancakes. I've never understood the difference. No. I sometimes wonder whether hotcakes are smaller or something. I don't know that there's an actual difference. And yes, Mod, Ash, I agree with that one. The Trader Joe's is great. Spaghetti bolognese. All right, I'll do a quick news summary. Someone just mentioned that. Lars mentioned it. Not a terrible idea. Let me do a quick summary of the stories we covered tonight, and then I'm going to go finish my meal and chill out in front of the TV. I did finish watching at least the first season or first two seasons of Made in Heaven, MADE, on Amazon. Wonderful show. Thank you, Jetta. Oh, I also last night finished the first season of Fallout. Excellent. I sort of stopped in the middle. You guys had told me I should finish it. Went and finished it. Excellent. Absolutely excellent. Really good. As my nephew said, somehow they didn't screw it up. It's really good. Yeah. So very excited. All right. Today's day 830 of Putin's 3-day special military operation. The first publicly announced NATO instructor arrived in Ukraine today from Greece to train Ukrainians in F-16s. The 24 F-16 fighters that the Netherlands will be transferring to Ukraine may be used to strike targets inside Russia, the Dutch defense minister said. Russian economy update. Russians are looking at raising taxes across the board, value-added tax, income, profit, excise taxes on real estate. Putin promised not to raise taxes, but the economic situation is not going well. He's also going to have to raise interest rates. They think interest rates are already at 16%, and he's going to raise them higher. And inflation is estimated to believe 15 to 20%, even though the official rate is 8%. Nobody believes it. And gasoline production has also dropped to 20% in Russia because of Ukrainian attacks. Vice President Kamala Harris of the U.S. is going to attend the Global Peace Summit in Switzerland middle of this month instead of Biden. Zelensky accused the Chinese of sabotaging the peace summit by throwing their weight around to try to convince countries not to go. Basically, China, as Zelensky said, China is in Russia's pocket, which was an interesting way of putting it because it minimizes China and makes them look subservient to Russia, which they aren't and do not want to appear. The Chinese are messing with the Russians. Financial Times reports that the Chinese are demanding extra low prices for a new natural gas pipeline that would go from Russia to China. And the Chinese are only willing to do it if they buy a small amount and the prices are at the same low subsidized price the Russians subsidize for their own domestic production. So that's kind of funny, China being kind of jerks toward the Russians, which is funny. I forgot to mention this. A group of Russian women staged a small but rare protest outside the Russian Defense Ministry demanding their return of their husbands from war. That does not happen in Russia. That's interesting. Italy will send a second SAMP-T air defense system to Ukraine to defend against incoming missiles and things. The Speaker of the Georgian Parliament signed the controversial Foreign Agents Bill into law. This is a Putin-style law that the Russians use and now the Georgian government will use to try to oppress pro-democracy groups in that country. The Washington Post had a big article on basically the Russians spending up to $1 million or €1 million a month bribing far-right politicians in Europe. It was a whole plot that the intelligence services from like 5 different countries uncovered, and it raises the question of who the Russians are paying in America because, right, they're paying $1 million a month to European politicians, but they're not paying any American politicians or American political movements. Come on, get the fuck out of here, as we say. The Ukrainian troops, special forces, fought alongside Syrian rebels to destroy Russian mercenaries in Syria. That's kind of wild. And finally, the BBC reports on the Russians behaving badly in Paris. French intelligence officials believe Russia is behind a stunt in which 5 coffins draped in a French flag and bearing the inscription "French soldiers of Ukraine" were dropped near the Eiffel Tower. That is it for our news, guys. Go and check out our auctions. Very cool auction items, including the very cool Russian warship "Go F Yourself" mug from Ukraine, written in Russian, apparently, because that's how the saying was done, so the Russians would understand. They sank the Russian warship, the Moskva, a couple weeks later. Anyway, this is a great mug from Ukraine. Neat souvenir. You will find it in our auctions. Half the money from the auctions goes to Ukraine. Half the money goes to support me because I do this full time, and Nobody pays me other than you guys. So I appreciate your help. You can find the auctions over at Discord. On TikTok, go to my Linktree link in my profile. Look for the link there. Click it. And then click Discord. Thank you, Super Hornet. For you guys on YouTube, actually, for you on YouTube, you can go to the description in my of the show today. And I should have the Linktree link in there. Click it. And the very top link will be Discord. Go there. Look for the auctions. All right, guys. Have a very good night, guys. We did a little over an hour and a half. Woo-woo. Long show, but you deserve it. And thank you, mods, as always. Thank you for all the gifts. And I will see you guys tomorrow night, 6 o'clock Eastern Time, U.S., as always, is my show, Monday to Friday. And we talk about the latest news from Ukraine. So see you guys tomorrow night. Thank you all. Have a good night. I'm going to have a little bit of food and watch a little more TV and figure out what I'm going to watch now that I'm done with Fallout. I'm not sure what to watch now. We'll see. All right. I'll see you guys. Thank you. Bye, YouTube. And bye, TikTok.